Hi, we're going to continue our lesson on learning principles and approaches. We have already looked at behavioral psychology. We are going to look at cognitive psychology. Let's get straight into it. Okay. There are several learning theories that fall under cognitive theories. We're going to consider a few of them. Okay, but before then, let's look at this. Let's look at the teacher. Why do you think he is using a white chalk on a green board? Or why would he use a capital letter and a small letter? Yes, this has something to do with the brain. And that is what concerns the cognitivist. We have several learning theories here. We have the Gestalt, we have the schema, we have the multi-store, we have the information processing cycle, and all that. In this lesson, we will consider the Gestalt and information processing theory and a little of the schema theory. Okay. Now, what is the emphasis of cognitive learning or cognitive theory? Now, cognitive theory concerns how people think, how people understand, and how people know. So they are basically looking at how people understand and represent the outside world within themselves. So whatever the person sees, how does the person interprets it? And so that is what cognitivists talk about. Let's look at some of the main issues. They present a positive view of development, emphasizing conscious thinking. So they believe that when every human being gives a thought to something in order to get it well. Now, cognitivists like Piaget and Vygotsky emphasize on individuals' active construction of understanding. So they believe that an individual can construct his or her own understanding. Now, Piaget, as we know, also talks about the importance of examining developmental changes in children's thinking. So you must give tasks according to the level of the child's thinking. And the information processing cycle also gives great details about the cognitive process. That is how the mind is able to comprehend. Okay, let's look at the Gestalt psychology. Gestalt psychology. We are looking at just a few highlights and link that to Courseware development. Okay. Now, Gestalt psychology says that human consciousness cannot be broken down into elements. What this is saying is that human beings see things as a whole. So that is the idea of Gestalt, that human beings see things as a whole. So even if they see lines, they tend to form a shape out of the line. Okay. Some of the cognitivists, some of those people who propounded the Gestalt theory are these people. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this. There's something called Gestalt effect. Gestalt effect refers to the form-forming capability of our senses, particularly with respect to the visual recognition of figures and whole forms instead of just a collection of simple lines and curves. So, Gestalt effect is saying that our senses have the capability, or our senses are able to form whole things, are able to put together whole things. They don't see anything as just simple lines or curves, but they see it as a whole. Let's look at this. Now, when you look at this image, you may think it's a lady, a young lady. You may also think it's a man with saxophone. Good. So, why do you say that? These are lines. These are white and black. But then, the mind is not looking at the white, it's not looking at just the shapes, it's looking at everything as a whole. So if you take everything as a whole, you may see a woman, or depending on how you see, you may see a man with a saxophone. Okay, let's look at some of them. Let's look at this. What do you see? You may see a cup. You may also see two women, two human beings. Okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? It means that people will perceive and interpret ambiguous and complex images as the simplest forms possible. Now, when you look at this, when you look at this image, because it's quite complex, you have simplified it to say that we simplify it to say it's a woman. So when something is complex, the one viewing it will try to interpret it simply. Okay. So what does this mean for courseware development? You must be explicit on whatever you are giving out. Because whatever image you put forth might have a different thing, a different connotation. So be explicit. If, for this picture, if it is a cup, I should state that it is a cup. I shouldn't leave it for people to guess. Okay, let's look at this. What do you see? You may see a girl. Others may also see a woman. Let's look at this. This is the hair of the girl. This is the eye, the cheek, the neck. Okay. Now, Okay, so this is also the old lady. This is the hair. This is the nose. The nose. So the young lady. This is the young lady. This is the young lady. This is the chin. Then, so that is the young lady. Okay. Now, let's look at the old lady. The old lady, this is the hair. This is the old lady's nose. This is the nose. This is the mouth. This is the chin of the old lady. I hope you get the difference now. Okay. So what all this means is that what does this mean? Okay. What this also means is that elements are perceived as either the element in focus or background. So, if you want to look at this as a woman, as an old woman, you will not see the lady. If you want to see the lady, then you will not see the old woman. So that is. So when the person takes one out of it, it takes everything as the background. So you see, you must be particular when you are designing your courseware. Okay, let's look at this one too. This, although they are words standing independent, when I give this word to you, try to pronounce washu. Washu. Washu because you think that they can be put together. Look at this shape. Though they are lines, but you may see it as a rectangle. Look at this word. You may be tempted to say perception. You may be tempted to, because the gap doesn't mean anything. You feel that it is together, it is one. Okay, so we must note that if something is different, we must make it stand out. Because this perception, if there are two different words, then I should make sure they stand out so that people will not confuse it for one word. Okay. Because when seeing a complex arrangement of, we tend to look for a single recognizable part. Okay. Now let's look at that is the Gestalt. So by Gestalt, we mean that students or learners or users see things as a whole, not in part. Okay, let's look at the information processing cycle model, sorry. Now, this is the process the human brain goes through to process information. So, let's look at this. This is that is the chart in full. Okay, so we have the sensory memory, the short memory, and the long-term memory. So your body takes, your senses take inputs from the environment. So that is the sensory side. So your eyes, your ears, your nose takes input from the environment, and it's stored here for a short while. Then when you give attention to it, when you are attentive to it, then it moves into the short-term memory. Or when you find some patterns in it, when you find, let's say, this thing is similar to that, it makes you move it to the short-term memory. Now, what can make something lost is lack of rehearsal. So, when you don't rehearse, when you don't rehearse, you tend to lose the thing. That is what the information processing cycle means. That when you don't rehearse it, when you don't think about what is on the short-term memory, if you don't give a thought to it, it is decayed. The body sees it as not good, or you don't need it. Okay, but when you give a thought to it, when you find some patterns, it moves into the short-term memory. But when the things are there without a rehearsal, it can be displaced. It can also decay. Now, when you encode, when you deliberately make attempt to learn it, and also try to retrieve it, try to think about it, talk about it, then you move it into the short-term, long-term memory. Now, what can make you forget something in the long-term memory is interference or lost cues. At times, you may not be able to recall the full fact because of something. Let's say your lower primary rhymes. For some, you're able to sing. For some, you're able to sing, for some, you are not. Why? Because there are certain things you might have done later that have made you forget it. So let's move into it. So the sensory motor, that is where the information enters. So in a house, we will just say the lobby or the veranda or the porch to the house, whilst we can take the short-term memory as, let's say, the hall. And you can take a long-term memory as the bedroom. Okay. So whatever information your body takes from the environment, it changes it using transducers into what the brain can understand. Okay, the short-term memory can keep information for just half a second for vision and 3 seconds for hearing. So when you hear something and you don't give a thought to it, it will last for 3 seconds. But if you give a thought to it, it should last longer. Okay. Let's look at the short term. The short term memory is like the working memory. It's like the table you work on. So whatever we are doing now is on the short term memory. So whatever you are reading now will be on the short term memory until you give a thought to it to move it to the long term memory. Okay. Now the long term memory is the lasting retention of information. So that it keeps information for a lifetime. And the capacity is limitless. Okay. So the question is, how do we move information into the long-term memory? One, you must encourage a positive transfer. That is transfer of learning using appropriate strategies or activities. Teacher may transfer learning using appropriate strategies or activities. So, using RPK, using relevant previous knowledge to connect to the new one, the new lesson will help students to transfer knowledge from the old to the new. Okay. So, you can also look at another way as dual coding. Now, for dual coding, we are saying that you remember better when two processes are engaged. So, when you are writing, if you are teaching children how to write 8 and you write it on the board, chances are that they may not get it. But if you say that, let us write S, and then while saying that you are writing, and then write another S backwards, so we get our 8. The student gets to hear you and see you do. So that is dual coding. Now you need to have rehearsal. That is to rehearse, to think over it, to repeat it over and over. We have 2 types of rehearsal. We have the rote one, that is maintenance rehearsal, mental, and the elaborative. For the elaborative, all that you do is that information is expanded. So, we are talking about computers, but you liken computers to human body. So, if you do that, then that is an elaborative rehearsal. We don't encourage maintenance rehearsal. You can also use instructional strategies like group discussion, singing, reading aloud, cooperative learning, inquiry, discovery, experimenting, or learning by doing so that as they do, as they discuss, as they sing, they're able to move things from the short term to the long term memory. Okay, you can also use mnemonics. You can help them use mnemonics. So, in this example, someone wanted to teach the names of lakes in US. So we are Horion, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. So he says the acronym is OHMS. OHMS. Okay. The mnemonic. Okay. Okay. So you can also choose a peg word. That is, instead of using the first letters for the mnemonic, you can use terms like my very eyes may just see under 9 planets. So that is it. That is also a mnemonic. You can also use memory gadgets like mind mapping tools, graphic organizers to organize everything. So let's say I'm teaching about computers. Okay. Now, I can use a graph like this. Okay. Let me draw. So, okay, computer. Now we have 2 components. 2. Okay, we have the hardware and we have the software. Good. So when I do this, you get the thing better. So this some of the tools you can use. Okay. Let's look at why people forget. I've already said this. So one is the decay. One is the decay, and 2 is interference. So decay, passive loss of due to inactivity or lack of rehearsal. So if you don't think about it over and over again, you forget. So the law of exercise is saying that when you are rehearsing about it, then there's the connection between the stimulus and the response will be greater. Okay. So if you are rehearsing what we are learning now, then you get to remember the more. Okay. Interference. It takes place when the recall of one event inhibits the other. There are 2 types. Okay. So we have the proactive and the retroactive. The proactive occurs when you fail to learn subject B because of subject A, which you learned earlier because it interrupted your recall of the fact in session B. Okay, so let me use this classic example. You attend one church a church. So, assuming I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, so I attend another church rally, seminar, effort or crusade. Now, I may not be able to learn the truth they may be presenting because of what I have studied earlier. So that is a proactive interference. Now, retroactive occurs when the learning of a new material prevents the recall of an older material. So an example is that now you have forgotten all that you studied in the lower primary, because the new material conflicts with what you studied earlier. Okay.